All right. Well, welcome everyone to our virtual roundtable on Make Polluters Pay and the California Climate Superfund Act. My name is Jason Feifel. I'm a senior campaigner with the Center for Biological Diversity, and I'm really excited to be facilitating this virtual roundtable along with my friends and colleagues at EOPA. I want to first thank everyone who took time out of their days to attend this roundtable. Really glad to have you here. We have a great group of elected officials, staff, and leaders in their communities joining us today. And I want to express my deep gratitude to the commitment of everyone on this call to addressing climate impacts in their communities. And the purpose of today's roundtable is to focus on local action for a statewide climate superfund in California. So we'll share updates on the Climate Superfund Act. We'll highlight local leadership and we'll discuss how to build momentum for this statewide. And with that opening, I'd like to pass the mic to Dominic to introduce elected officials to protect America.
Hey, thanks, Jason. I really appreciate you moderating today and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining. As you may know, elected officials Protect America, we're a network of state and local lawmakers across the country committed to acting and solving the climate emergency, ensuring environmental justice, and protecting our lands, waters, and democracy. And we're so grateful that you're here. It's really the elected officials who we are of, by, and for that we're here to serve. So I was elected in Caroline, New York, 8 years on council, 6 as deputy mayor. And our values are protection, that is up to us as elected officials to protect and steward our communities, justice, that by raising our voices and using our policy-making powers, we can advance justice in our communities. And lastly, obviously prosperity, that by joining together, we have the power to turn the tides on these issues and create a better future for all. So next slide, please. Just a little bit about EOPA. If you haven't connected with us in a while or you're new to EOPA, what can we offer you? You can think of our work in 3 areas. The first is on education. So we have a certificate in public leadership, where we teach values-based communications, emotional intelligence, and leadership, negotiations, skill sets that we may not get as elected officials or in training as candidates. So really to help us move forward policy and folks form policy teams and compete for a policy prize. And we've had some pretty amazing policy solutions come out of that, including some folks on this call. So happy to chat more about that. We also have a master's program in public leadership as well. So that's on the education side, and I should say we offer full scholarships for elected officials for the certificate program. So if you're interested, we'll send information to apply. On the media and storytelling side, what we can offer you is we have a news magazine that goes out to 25,000 state and local lawmakers across the country. We also have and that's really to highlight your op-eds, videos, policy successes, anything that you want to share with elected officials, with your peers. Say, hey, here's the great work we're doing in our city or our county and our jurisdiction. We also have a film production arm, so happy to provide support as we're able to do so with social media videos or content. We have a podcast run by elected officials and also a book publishing arm with 70 mission-driven titles. So if you have a book in you, let us know. Lastly, what we're most known for, and that's why we're here today, is the policy and advocacy work, where opportunities that we offer are really from local to international. So for example, we have a delegation going to the UN climate talks in Brazil, COP30. We have a national task force that is really centered on protecting energy security and democracy. State-based work, we have summits, we have an elected official fellowship program that can help provide support and communication support, staff support for working on issues that you're passionate about that align with our mission, and our leadership council who leads and informs our work. So that's a little bit about EOPA. We'll include our email and to our website afterwards. With that, I'll hand it back to Jason to kick us off for our topic today.
Thanks so much, Dominic. Appreciate that. And yeah, I'll run through the agenda and what to expect from this virtual roundtable today. So we will start things off with a short video from San Diego City Council President Joe LaCava. San Diego was one of the first cities to pass a resolution in support of the Make Polluters Pay Climate Superfund Act in California. So we'll hear a little bit in the video about Council President LaCava's experience, how that resolution came to be, and why the Climate Superfund is important to him and City of San Diego. Then we'll hear from my colleague, Maggie Coulter, who is a senior attorney at the Center for Biological Diversity. We'll get a brief overview on the bill from her and an update on where things stand currently. And then after that, we'll move into the heart of our conversation and why we're here. So this will be the roundtable discussion. And we'll have a great panel with elected officials and leaders who have moved resolutions in their communities. And we'll have some guiding questions. Each panelist will have a chance to answer those questions. And after that discussion, we'll get into some Q&A and want to hear questions from you, the audience. And anytime you have a question, we'll bring you into the panel so that you can ask your question live, and we'll have a good discussion. So that's the basic plan for today. Thank you again for being here. Really appreciate it. It's, a critical moment to connect about this bill and, the opportunity to pass the Climate Superfund here in California and to make polluters pay for the climate damage they've caused. So with that, let's get started with the video from San Diego City Council President Joe LaCava.
I don't think we can hear the audio. We may have to come back to that.
Why don't we switch things up a little bit? Maybe we can go to you, Maggie, to share an overview on the bill and where things stand with the bill currently. Oh, maybe we're back. Let's give it 1 second before we go to Maggie.
Let's try this one more time and then we can switch it to Maggie.
Sounds great. Not hearing the audio come through.
San Diego's
All right,
first
come back to
district
that.
in the
Andrew, when you unmuted, we heard it.
Oh, okay, then let's try that one last time, and I think that'll work.
Thanks everyone for your patience.
Shares.
Thanks for bearing with us while we have some audio Zoom fun. Or maybe we do go back to Maggie and circle back on it.
Well,
Can't get it.
All right, here we go. One more shot.
Thank you, Jason. And I want to share my appreciation to the teams at the Center for Biological Diversity and elected officials to protect America for their advocacy. My name is Joe LaCava. I am the council president of the San Diego City Council, and I represent San Diego's first district in the northwestern corner of our city. Earlier this year, I was proud to introduce and unanimously pass a resolution supporting the Make Polluters Pay bills in Sacramento. As each of you and your respective cities considers the same approach, I want to talk about the impacts and urgencies of the bills. During my time here on council and the past 3 years as the chair of San Diego's Environment Committee, I've had the privilege of working with the inspiring group of advocates of Youth v. Oil. With their hard work in organizing, we passed a resolution supporting SB 1137 to protect communities from oil drilling near homes and schools. And then, when Big Oil thought the specified distance from homes was too far, I joined Youth v. Oil again to lead a resolution at our council opposing their attempt at a referendum. Both resolutions passed unanimously. Make Polluters Pay was a different approach. Unlike SB 1137, which was preventing from future harm, Make Polluters Pay was about correcting the wrongs of the past and investing in the future. For that reason alone, I was eager to work with Youth v. Oil on another resolution. The timing of their ask was particularly important as San Diego, just like cities across the state and country, was facing historic budget challenges and a quickly changing landscape in Washington, D.C. This past June, we patched a $250 million deficit, forcing us to make difficult choices with public safety, libraries, and staff wages. Unfortunately, climate spending took a back seat. Since its adoption in 2015, we have made tremendous strides implementing San Diego's landmark Climate Action Plan and integrating it into every city department. We made it a part of our everyday operations to reach our goal of net zero by 2035. We have the political will to do this. We have the public support to do this. But like many cities, we do not have the money to fully implement. That's where Make Polluters Pay comes in. We're working on making our communities more resilient, but our residents continue to pay the physical and financial cost of sea level rise, extreme heat, and inland flooding. It's time we remove the burden on local taxpayers and hold fossil fuel companies and polluters accountable. Make Polluters Pay will ensure San Diego and cities throughout California receive long-term funding for projects like coastal protection, wildfire preparedness, and green infrastructure, all without the use of local funds. I want to thank the bill authors, Assemblymember Addis, Senator Menjivar, for their vision. Thank you to Assemblymember Chris Ward in San Diego for adding your name as a co-author. And thank you to all the advocates pushing these bills. And like Youth v. Oil, inspiring your local city halls. As an elected official, parent, and grandparent, I realize how the decisions we make today will have impact for decades to come. That is why I ask you to join me in passing resolutions to support Make Polluters Pay and take the next step towards fixing our past, improving our present, and planning for the future.
All right. Well, with that from Council President LaCava, let's go to my colleague, Maggie Coulter, Senior Attorney with the Center for Biological Diversity, and one of the lead attorneys and policy specialists working on this bill to share an overview on what exactly the bill is and the current status. So over to you, Maggie.
Thanks, Jason. Just confirming that you all can see my slides. Great. Thanks so much. I want to provide a little context and some specifics about California's proposed Polluters Pay Climate Superfund Act. First of all, what do we really mean by Polluters Pay? This is an umbrella of different actions and activities under which Climate Superfund legislation falls. So we also have exposing big oil disinformation and the climate nuisance lawsuits. So not only is there continually being uncovered mounting evidence that fossil fuel industry scientists knew that fossil fuel products cause global warming and climate change, but there was also some recent investigative reporting that show in California specifically, the precursor entity to WISPA, the Western States Petroleum Administration or Association, their precursor entity, Western Oil and Gas Association, knew and began their deceptive PR strategies as early as the 1950s to hide some of the potential adverse impacts of their products. We've seen US lawsuits across the nation that seek to hold major oil and gas companies accountable for this kind of deception. We've seen there's at least 7 lawsuits in California, some being brought by the California Attorney General, about fossil fuel companies' role in the climate and plastic pollution crises. But why we're really here is to talk about Climate Superfund legislation. This is another tool in the toolbox for making polluters pay. There's lots of momentum nationwide. There have been 2 laws already passed in New York and Vermont, and numerous other additional laws introduced in various states. The basic fundamental principle behind the Climate Superfund legislation is the legal principle of polluters pay. So the party who produces the environmental pollution should be responsible for the costs of preventing, mitigating, and remediating the damage caused by their activities. In California, the polluters pay principle is already enshrined in existing California laws, like our Water Code and the Health and Safety Code. And the Climate Superfund proposal in California is modeled after Federal Superfund Law, or CERCLA. This is the Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Liability Act, which is used for hazardous waste cleanup. So Climate Superfund laws deal with cleanup of damage and harms from past fossil fuel emissions, whereas at the federal level, we see this statute for hazardous waste. So retroactive liability laws like CERCLA have withstood constitutional challenges under the Due Process Clause, and federal courts evaluate whether the government has shown their law will have a legitimate legislative purpose furthered by rational means, giving significant deference to the legislative and executive branches. So federal courts already have unanimously found that pollution remediation, like that which would be imposed by the Climate Superfund law, is a legitimate government purpose, and that it's rational to impose liability for the costs on the parties that created and profited from the activities that caused the pollution. So we've got this sound legal backing for the California's Polluters Pay Climate Superfund Act. So what does SB 684 and AB 1243 actually do? First, it asks California EPA to undertake a comprehensive statewide cost study of the damages to the state caused by past fossil fuel emissions from a period of time of 1990 to 2024. Then it looks at existing publicly available data to identify responsible parties. So these are fossil fuel companies that did business in California and are responsible for more than 1 billion metric tons of CO2 equivalent emissions between 1990 and 2024. So we're only looking at the largest companies with the most pollution. The third thing Cal EPA will do is assess a cost recovery demand that is proportional to the responsible party's historic emissions. And then that cost recovery demand will be deposited into the state's new Climate Superfund. The money in the fund will fund California's future. The fees collected will fund projects and programs to mitigate, remedy, or prevent climate change costs and harms. And the aim of the bill is to dedicate at least 40% of the funds to communities hit hardest by fossil fuel pollution and to prioritize strong labor and job standards. So there are some estimates the bill could generate approximately $150 billion over the next 20 years. So that would be around $7.5 billion a year. These are separate and complementary tactics to the state and local government climate nuisance cases. They're not the same. They don't preempt those cases or any local government's ability to bring nuisance or fraud lawsuits against fossil fuel companies. And this legislation is also distinct from cap and trade. Cap and trade is a market-based program with a purpose to incentivize polluters to reduce future emissions. But Climate Superfund's purpose is to obtain recompense for damage caused by past emissions. So we also see that these are incredibly popular. This is a poll from 2023, but there was a more recent poll just in September of 2025 that found that nearly 4 in 5 voters, so 79%, say that oil and gas companies should be required to pay for climate damages, including 88% of Democrats, 80% of independents, and 69% of Republicans. And for California specifically, this is a 2024 poll. So these numbers are about 1.5 years old, but you can see that there's really significant positive support in California as well. So where we are and what's next. 9 local resolutions in support have already been passed, and more than 30 are already moving in the works. The California Democratic Party supports the California Climate Superfund, and just today, Influence Map released its first report detailing lobbying against Climate Superfund legislation in California. And the report found that in California specifically, opposition lobbying was conducted primarily by fossil fuel industry front groups and trade associations. And I can throw the link to that in the chat. Both our Assembly and Senate authors were just at New York City Climate Week and did an event with other Climate Superfund state legislators and fossil-free media. And so now we're focusing on a big ramp up and push this winter for January of 2026, where we'll be moving through final committees and hopefully to floor votes. I'm happy to answer any additional questions. If folks have any, there's my email address. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Maggie. Very, very helpful overview of the bill itself, current status. If you're listening and you have questions, I think you can start putting your questions in the Q&A chat, and we'll get to those. But next, we're going to move to the conversation part of this. And so we have several leaders on who will share about their experiences introducing and getting resolutions passed in their communities. And so I would like to introduce, first off, Igor Tregub, Berkeley City Councilmember, who will be one of our panelists. I'd also like to welcome and introduce Heidi Harmon, Senior Organizer with Greenpeace and former Mayor of San Luis Obispo. And finally, Brooke Balthaser, Community Organizing Manager with CFROG. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So I think to get us started, let's just dive into our first question. So would love to hear what motivated you and your community to take action on the Climate Superfund Act. Someone like to go first? Yeah. Okay, Brooke, take it away.
Yeah, so our community, like many other communities across the state and the country, was motivated to take action on the Superfund because we are no stranger to the devastation of the climate crisis. Ventura County is not only the fastest warming county in the lower United States, but also the third largest oil producing county. So we felt these effects of climate change through, wildfires, coastal erosion, flooding, heat waves, but we've also seen the presence of the oil industry in our county and what happens when they aren't held accountable. So I think this felt very personal to our communities here and created a lot of buy-in. At the same time, our group had come together post-election back in like November and January to talk about how we put our heads together and build power to address what we know is coming over the next few years. And our communities care about a lot of different things in regard to climate and affordability. So home hardening, wildfire preparedness, first responder preparedness, green jobs, and all of these things are so important and we realize can be supported by the passage of the Climate Superfund. So we figure if we can put our heads together, build power, build this support on the Central Coast to get this bill passed, then in the future we can see that funding and that support come in locally to address all of these issues that we care about. So that's why we were motivated.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question, and thank you to Jason and my co-panelists. I think first and foremost, I would say this is an incredible partnership that, I have seen all of the fellow panelists on various Zooms and in person. And this is just the current apex of our continuing to build collective power. So the themes were very similar for me in terms of what got the Berkeley community to organize in support of passing the Polluters Pay legislative package. Berkeley is, of course, no stranger to climate leadership. We have led the way on a number of issues, including passing an advisory measure that we are moving forward on to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 80% over 2005 levels by 2050. But we are also no stranger to some downstream impacts created by fossil fuels. We are 8 miles downstream from a Chevron plant that has flared time and time again in neighboring Richmond. That has sent thousands of community members to the hospital in one of the most violent manifestations of that. And also the incident that really made an indelible impact on me in working to switch careers to work on something that combats climate change full time, which I'm very fortunate to be able to do through my day job and through the city council. We also, this is a continuous fight, and there have been and probably will be some setbacks. Oakland is our other major city neighbor. And unfortunately, it just lost a lawsuit on appeal around the ability of coal to be transported through the port of Oakland into China. So all of that provides the backdrop as to why it is more important than ever before for us to double down. We have seen the not even a failure of leadership in DC, just a full frontal attack on all the things that we hold dear, all that we love is on the line, and this is the time to double down. So it was such a deep honor to work with community partners and constituents to introduce a resolution in support of the Polluters Pay package.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Tregub. Heidi, let's go to you. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I'm really passionate about climate action in general. I've been a climate activist for about 25 years, and that really comes out of an extension of my commitment to my own kids to create a safe and thriving world for them. So this fits perfectly into that. When I was the mayor of San Luis Obispo, we had climate action as one of our major city goals, and we did a lot then. And, you know, as these climate impacts continue to increase, we know people running cities. So for the electeds, you know, that are watching this, you know better than a lot of folks what it takes to run a city, even in the best of times, even in the easiest of times. And I think the pandemic really gave us a glimpse into what it's like to run cities and counties in less than easy times. And that was incredibly challenging from every perspective, including fiscally. And so as we project forward, but also we're all, of course, already experiencing a lot of climate impacts, we really have to start getting serious about asking the question, who is going to and who should be held financially, especially accountable to make communities whole, to help us get prepared, to adapt, to mitigate, and to recover from the disasters that the fossil fuel industry is in large part responsible for creating and certainly for exacerbating. And to me, this is obviously this is a financial question that we're talking about with the Make Polluters Pay bill. And also, though, it's a matter of fairness. You know, why should our community members, many of whom we know are struggling more than ever, especially financially, be left holding the financial bag for things that they did not contribute to or create? You know, I'm a homeowner myself. I'm moving to Oakland from San Luis Obispo, and I'm nervous to buy another home. I feel like it's getting close to the time in California's history to think about being a renter as opposed to a buyer. Why? Because of the impact of the climate crisis on insurance, for example. That's a huge financial risk that homeowners across the state are taking. But also, I would say, lastly, but not leastly, I think creating accountability for the climate crisis is the moral question of our day. And so not only is it fiscally right for the fossil fuel industry to be held financially accountable, so far, this is one of the main tools that I've seen to really start to also talk about holding the fossil fuel industry morally accountable for their negative contributions to our communities, to our health, to our families, and to our futures.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you, all three of you, for sharing those like really powerful grounding perspectives to open this conversation. Next, I'd like to go to, I want to see if one, maybe two of you could walk through what were just some of the like nuts and bolts of introducing and passing a resolution, and were there any challenges faced along the way, and what did you do to overcome those?
Well, I can start. Thankfully, because of all the, Berkeley, its history of leadership. I'm going to touch on specific challenges, but that did not necessarily happen in the Berkeley context. We were one of the first jurisdictions to introduce the item. I think we were engaged in some friendly competition, and I believe a couple of cities actually did beat us to the punch. But on June 3rd, the item that our office introduced came to the council and actually passed out on the consent calendar with 2 additional co-sponsors. So at the maximum number of co-sponsors that we could have. But that would not be possible without all the inside, outside grassroots and grass tops building power. And shout out to EOPA actually, because they did something very smart. Well, they do many things. Well, all the things they do are smart. But in this context, we started getting constituent emails from just various Berkeley community members, which were going to the entire council, asking us to introduce a resolution. And it was so much fun to be able to respond or have our staff who helped prepare the item, and some of them are on this Zoom, so shout out to my staff as well that are here. But we were able to just basically say thank you for reaching out, and this item has been introduced, and come to the meeting on June 3rd or speak in support or write in support of the item. I can leave it there for Berkeley. There have been some challenges to get support for this package in some other forums. EOPA is a 501c3 organization, so I'm just going to talk about it obliquely to say not everyone is necessarily on the same page within certain Democratic Party circles. And there has been an opportunity there to have conversations, to have really deep conversations around this. And primarily with our friends in the labor movement, some of them who have felt that this is an attack on their ability to have jobs. Now, not just everyone understands this line of work. To be in fossil fuels is not sustainable. It's not healthy. It's not good for the workers or their families. And we are in a economically challenging time, and so there is an existential threat there. So I can't say that we are there yet, because if we were, this bill would be on the governor's desk and getting signed. But what I will say is those long-standing relationships continue to be cultivated, conversations continue to be had, and there is a valuable role, whether you are a decision maker or grassroots or grass tops or a neighbor who has something to say in support of why it is important to hold fossil fuel companies accountable, particularly in this time. Everyone has a role to play, and I would not be able to have a successful passage of this resolution had it not been for everyone playing a very integral role.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Heidi or Brooke, anything to add? Yeah.
I would say that some of the, well, first of all, it's been a great organizing policy. I think people immediately get it when you say make polluters pay. They may not understand every detail and all the nuance, but I think that right away really people get that and people want that. And Jason, I can't remember if we talked about the polling numbers on the top of this call, but this poll's really high in terms of overall support from the community in California broadly. And you can see why. Again, just to refer back to what I said, the fiscal part, but also the fairness part really resonates with people. And so I'm probably in 10 maybe different local or organizing groups all over the state supporting different resolution processes. And they've been really successful and brought a lot of community members out and given them a chance to engage with their local councils and county boards of supervisors. Some of the pushback have been, is a resolution really worth doing? Is this just a symbolic gesture that if I'm a council member, is it worth the political capital that I might need to spend to bring this forward? And to that, I've really been encouraging people to understand that I think symbolic moves actually are really important. And though in this case, it's significantly more than a symbolic gesture. This is the main way that in this critical period before the next legislative cycle in January, we are communicating with our colleagues in Sacramento. Hey, I'm over here in this little town on the Central Coast. I need support from you. And I expect you to stand with me as your fellow elected. We know that cities and counties are really the ones that are going to be left holding the bag. And so that resolution says our council, our board is looking to you, Sacramento, to support us through these challenging times. Another concern that comes up, which is understandable, is staff time. So I think those of us that are on councils and boards know we hear a lot about that at times, and they do have a lot on their plate. And so happily, there is a template. EOPA has that template, but as has been noted, a lot of cities and counties have already gone before. And so there are variations on the resolution out there as well. And so the staff time should be significantly minimal. So you have that template, you have those other examples that you can adapt to your own community, I think, with minimal use of staff time. So this is an important way to message to our colleagues in Sacramento at a pretty minimal staff cost. And so, yeah, that's been some of the pushback. And also lastly, this might come up later, if you sign a resolution now and the bill changes significantly, what happens then? And so Jason might be able to speak more in depth to that particular question, but generally speaking, your resolution will have a date stamp on it, right? So if you sign it today and things change significantly, it's clear that you were signing on to the bill in its current form today. But also my understanding is, and again, I defer to Jason, if this bill changes in a significant way where it's, I'm sorry, I'm in a hotel and we're getting in a, they're doing a fire alarm, so I'll mute myself. But if it's gutted in any way, my understanding is that the bill will be pulled. So I think you can count on the essence of the bill remaining the same.
Yes, that is exactly right. And maybe just to add on that it is very typical of bills and pieces of legislation to, change some throughout the process. And at every opportunity in the process, anyone who has weighed in support will have an opportunity to reaffirm their support or change their position if there's any reason to do so. But I can also say that both authors, Senator Menjivar and Assemblymember Addis, are deeply committed to the structure, intent, and purpose of this bill as it stands currently. Brooke, anything to add on your end? If not, we could go to the next question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think most of it was covered. We kind of faced the same challenges that Heidi was mentioning. And yeah, I think it was pretty much covered.
Okay. Okay. And I'll say before we go to the next question, if you do have questions that are coming up, please, please, please drop those questions in the Q&A. We will have time at the end of this roundtable session to get to your questions as well. So a couple more questions for our panel. So climate change has been called one of the biggest unfunded mandates facing local governments. How do you see the Climate Superfund Act supporting cities and counties to address local climate impacts?
I'll just, I think, I've been talking a lot about unfunded mandates because again, anyone in a city or county, you know, and if, in case you don't really understand that term, although I'm guessing the folks on the call are maybe painfully familiar with it, but you know, the state will often come down with a piece of legislation, demand that you do something like make sure your local creeks are clean to a certain extent, but not back up that legislation with any funding to make sure that you can facilitate that new policy. And that can be really hard for cities and counties to navigate that fiscal gap. And so I see the climate crisis, certainly climate crisis isn't coming down from the state, but it is coming to our communities. And this does present this unfunded mandate from the laws of physics, I guess you could say, that we will not have the financial wherewithal to be able to withstand. And so this is one of the best ways I've seen to ensure that we at least have some of the funding that we will need, again, like I said, to adapt, mitigate, and recover from the climate crisis. And also, I think something that's been new for, sorry, I'll mute myself.
Thank you, Heidi. Yeah, Councilmember Tregub.
Yeah, just in brief, cities across the nation and the state, as well as counties and all local jurisdictions, are facing significant budget deficits. In the city of Berkeley, we unfortunately had to deal with closing a $28 million budget shortfall just in the previous year alone. I also serve on the AVA Community Energy Board, and there was a very significant budget shortfall there that we had to close. And this, by the way, is, yeah, you can talk about macroeconomic impacts. A lot of these macroeconomic impacts, though, have been exacerbated by just the immense windfall of fossil fuels, as well as the investor-owned utility monopoly, and them not paying their fair share. And that very much downstream, the burden then gets shouldered by local governments such as mine and yours. And so this is really important as we are going to be looking for additional sources of funding, and the state as well. You know, this is an opportunity for the state to close its fiscal shortfalls. It's just the right thing to do. It's the fair thing to do. And it's about damn time that those industries that have spent their entire existence basically polluting and exacerbating public health outcomes start to pay their fair share.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you. Oh yeah, Brooke, let's go to you. Yeah, would love to hear your perspective and insight
Yeah,
on this.
just a couple of things to add, because I think we've seen this kind of play out during hearings where they're voting on the resolutions. And we actually saw that as kind of an unanticipated opportunity to show support for the Superfund. So in Ventura County, we've gotten resolutions passed at the cities of Port Hueneme and Oxnard, both of which are along the coast here on the Central Coast, big agricultural cities. And so in Port Hueneme, when we were, sitting waiting for our agenda item to come up, we were hearing the council talk about concerns with funding for beach dredging, which is, helpful for coastal erosion and keeping our coastal community safe over here. And that was an opportunity that we could highlight in our comments when our, agenda item came up of, hey, we heard you talking about a need for funding to address this beach dredging and coastal erosion, and this is exactly that, opportunity to get funding to address that. And then similarly in Oxnard, before our agenda item was heard, they're talking about a lack of funding to improve a levee system in the event that we have extreme flooding again or rainstorms. So that was another opportunity for us to highlight a specific example of how this funding can specifically improve and benefit this city. So yeah, there seems to be opportunities. If you go early, you listen, you hear about what the council cares about, and what their climate efforts are right now, which is generally has very limited funding with our local governments. So yeah.
Thank you, Brooke. Thank you. Really, really helpful local example there. I think one more question for the panel, and then I want to go to Angel to share a little bit about resources available, and then we'll go to Q&A. But yeah, last question for the panelists from me. What advice would you have to share with local elected officials or other advocates who are considering introducing a resolution in their jurisdiction? In some ways you've shared a bunch already, but maybe just one final tip or piece of advice.
I would say, just going back to something I already said, do a little bit of power mapping before you introduce this or any other resolution. Try to figure out who your allies are, who are the swings. See if anyone who has concerns, if they are legitimate concerns, figure out if there might be an opportunity to move them. And maybe that's, in the context of local government, we do have a Brown Act, so we are sometimes, we are limited in the number of fellow electeds on that body that we can speak with. But also this is an incredible opportunity to let the grassroots and community members do that work, because the Brown Act doesn't constrain them, and they can speak to every member of a local body.
Yeah, I think another piece of advice that I would offer is just when we think about all of the different ways that like climate change impacts our communities, it can become overwhelming. But just like reframing that into, okay, we have this plethora of issues that we need to figure out how to fund and how to address, and this Polluter Pays Climate Superfund can be the answer to that. So how do we shift that thinking into looking forward, as opposed to feeling like overwhelmed or, paralyzed with this terrible news that we hear every hour of every day. It can be a lot. So reframing, shifting to a more positive mindset of, okay, if we can get this bill passed, that can address this plethora of other issues that are impacting our communities. So we just need to focus on that right now.
Thank you, Brooke. Thank you, Brooke. Then Heidi, I heard you're still dealing with a fire drill, so we'll skip over you on this one, but assuming that resolves, we'll come back to you on another question. Let's go to a question from someone in the audience. So this was from Jordan Jeffries, who said, thanks for the great talk. With the federal government pulling funding from certain cities for political reasons, some worry that supporting this bill can make local governments a target. How do we weigh those risks against the potential benefits? Maybe Councilmember Tregub.
I can go after Brooke.
I was just thinking of like kind of flipping that question around of, well, if the federal government's going to threaten pulling funding, that's all the more reason to hold polluters accountable to create this other source of funding that isn't relying on federal or state budgets. So that's why there's, I would say, like this sense of urgency of, okay, well, if there's these threats of maybe withholding FEMA funds, all the more reason that we need polluter accountability.
Well put, well put.
Yeah, this is a timely question. Last night we passed the second reading of what I believe to be one of the strongest sanctuary city ordinances in the nation. And the thing is, whether we had passed that or not, Berkeley would still have we have and continue to have a target on our back. So to hold back, actually, the current administration doesn't understand nuance. They have a very warped sense of how they think things work, and they were going to attack local communities. They will just continue to do that. So thankfully, in California, we have a very strong, at least on this issue, a very strong state legislature and governor, and we have a fantastic attorney general who has now sued the Trump administration over 100 times. And there are opportunities for local jurisdictions to join in certain lawsuits. I have seen successful litigation of lawsuits where grants get pulled back, or they come with strings attached that are indefensible, frankly. And those have often gotten successfully beaten down in the court. So all that to say, this is a time when I think we have to meet fire with fire, no pun intended, and double down, because this is not just a clarion call, but it is the right thing to do. It is the fair thing to do. It is the just thing to do. And the more local jurisdictions step up and pass resolutions like this one, they can't take down all of us at the same time. So it's also strength in numbers.
Thank you for that. That was such a perfect segue into what we want to talk about next, which is really the how and more of the nuts and bolts. And so I want to turn things over to Angel Alfaro, Program Coordinator at EOPA, to talk a little bit about Resolution Toolkit and some resources available to move these local resolutions in your jurisdictions.
Hi, thank you, Jason, and thank you to our speakers for a wonderful discussion. So yes, my name is Angel Alfaro, and I am a program coordinator at EOPA, focused on fossil fuel phase-out programming. So as they've all mentioned, the Polluters Pay Climate Superfund protects taxpayers and communities by holding major fossil fuel companies accountable for the harm that their products have caused. It creates a sustainable funding stream for critical projects that make our communities safer and more resilient, especially for disadvantaged communities that have disproportionately handled the impacts of the climate emergency. So before, if anybody else has any more questions to drop in the Q&A chat and we jump to those, I did want to take a moment to walk you through some of the resources available on EOPA's Code Blue website to help you take action, which Heidi kind of brought up before. But if you look at eopacodblue.org, which is our 501c4 organization website, and I'll be sure to drop that link in the chat afterwards. And you look under the Polluters Pay Climate Superfund tab, which you can see up there. You'll find updates on the latest resolutions and letters in support of the Make Polluters Pay Climate Superfund. So right now we have, let's see. Yeah, we have about 11 municipalities that have already demonstrated their support, and we'd love to see that number continue to grow. So this over here is an active list of who has passed a resolution with links to the actual documents. As you can see here, or I can do another one if it'll load. Okay, well, I will drop this link in the chat and you can see for yourself. But if you click on those links, it'll bring you to the actual resolutions that you can use for reference, the documents themselves. And if you scroll down further, you will see a link to a sample resolution language that you can adopt and tailor for your own jurisdiction, just to kind of make the process easier for you all. And in addition, EOPA Code Blue is circulating a sign-on letter to Governor Newsom urging him to support the creation of a Climate Superfund, which you can see over here. And we currently have 119 signatories from elected officials across 25 counties, and the more this list grows, the stronger our collective message will be. So if you would like more information or interested in having a one-on-one conversation about any of these topics discussed here today, do not hesitate to reach out to me at angel@eopa.org, and I'd love to see how I can support you in moving things along in your own jurisdiction. And yeah, thank you all for your leadership and commitment to holding big oil accountable and making polluters pay. And we urge you to just keep advocating and supporting this extremely important legislation when it gets reintroduced in the next legislative cycle. And with that being said, thank you. And I will pass it back over to Jason, and I'll drop my information in the chat as well for you all.
Thank you, Angel. Well, we are approaching the top of the hour. I'm not seeing any additional questions. Maybe I'll give the panelists an opportunity for a final word, and then I think we'll close out. Brooke, Heidi, Councilmember Tregub, any final thoughts or words of wisdom to share? Yeah, Heidi, maybe over to you.
My alarm
if the
finally
fire
ended.
trail is- yeah.
I would just say too that this is absolutely worth doing. And for those of you, if you're on the call, you definitely have an interest in climate action. I think if you haven't really brought a lot of climate action to your council or board, this is a really good, practical, pragmatic policy to not only get past now, but to start a bigger conversation about climate action more broadly.
Thank you, Heidi. I think with that, let's close there. Angel dropped a link to the website in the chat. You can get more information on the EOPA Code Blue .org website. Angel's contact information is also in the chat, so feel free to reach out to her. And thank you once again to everyone who attended, took time out of your day to hear this conversation, to engage. This is such an incredibly important moment for this push. So thank you for being here today. And special thanks to our panelists for the really informative and inspiring conversation. And thank you, EOPA for hosting this. And with that, we'll close. Looking forward to being in touch. Thank you all.